Welcome everyone. Today we have an amazing Necromancer build. Looking behind me, this is a live demonstration from Raz QT with his Necromancer. And this is doing millions of damage. I think he hit up to over 8 million damage one hit with his Necromancer using the Wrath Lord. So this build will be learning one of the most broken meta build for the Necromancer, dealing tons of damage, and it's really fun to have a super minion that you can buff up and not just cruise through the map automatically. Now during the recording, I do believe Raz QT was actually around 300-200 corruption, and because he's playing hardcore, his build will be more conservative into survivability. As you can see, he has tons of barriers with the Ghost Flame. And our build will be a variation that will be combining both Rax's build and also Raz QT's build. So I have made my own variation of the build, and this one will allow you to push for over 500-1000 corruption with tons of additional damage and also survivability, with over 4000 HP, tons of resistance, and also tons of minion damage and also minion health. Now I have also written a detailed guide learning from Raz QT and also Rax, including the skills and also how they interact, the skill rotations, and also what are the highlights and what you should do as you cast those spells. Also some notes onto the idols, the blessings, and also most importantly, how to get each of your unique items, including using the Runes of Ascensions for the crucial helmet piece, which will be essential for the build. Together with the rest of the piece like the amulet, the chest, the boots, and also the sword, I'll give you guys the best method to farm those items and also how you can get those through Runes of Ascension and the raids behind it. This will be combined with a farming priority and also upcoming loot filters from level 1 to level 50 to level 100 for the Wrath Lord. Now since yesterday's video, due to popular requests, I will be adding the Wrath Lord into one of our broken tier list build, and stay tuned guys over here on Excel. I'll be adding the endgame build, the gameplays, and also how you transition from leveling, how you farm those items, and finally how you progress into the final build that we discuss over here, dealing millions and also millions of damage, and those minions are automatic, which will be really fun. Really excited to try this one. Now before we start, a big thank you to Raz QT for sharing his original build. His links and YouTube channel will be provided over here. He also streams live on Twitch, so make sure to check him out and ask him questions about the build. Rax have also made a build from the variation of his build, and here this is my take on the build, and my build will be focusing on 500 plus corruption up to 1000 corruption to give you guys greater mobility, more tankiness, and also more damage. So coming over to my builder's guide over here. Similar to Rax, I have decided to use this particular unique sword which can be turned into legendary. Now I'll be providing you guys with a variation from Raz QT, who is using an Exalted weapon over here. For me, I like the survivability of the sword, and this can allow me to get a little more warding and also more intelligence. Now the centerpiece of the Wrath Lord of course is going to be the Wrath Lord helmet. This particular helmet is going to be quite interesting and very essential as you summon a Method Wrath Lord which can consume other minions and become stronger. Now overall, this entire build only requires this helmet, and on the second part of the video I'll teach you guys how to farm the helmet, how to render the helmet, and how to find the helmet with more efficiency and also higher legendary potential. After the helmet, having the amulet will help your minion to deal more damage, especially having the additional damage critical multipliers will be great. The chest and also the boots are some of the late game warding potential items which gives you tons of survivability converted into warding. So you can see in most of their videos they have tons of warding, and here you can see Raz QT had over 16,000 warding because he was playing hardcore, and do keep in mind guys, for the hardcore variation he will definitely be tankier. Now the rest of the gears are pretty straightforward. We'll be getting minion damage, minion health whenever we can, while getting elemental resistance and also all resistance up to over 75%. You can uncap yourself a little bit just so that when monsters hit you, you'll have additional resistance. Let's say if they minus 20 resistance, you'll still be over 75%. As for the rings, we're going with a minion base rings, giving us more minion damage and also critical multiplier. Together with minion damage, with intelligence and also minion health, we can be scaling quite nicely with most of our minions. Now this is also the similar case for the gloves and also for the relic. We'll be getting more ward per second as an implicit on the relic, together with more intelligence and also getting additional ways to deal more minion damage. Now do keep in mind, we're getting the special experimental effects which will convert missing health into ward gain per second, which is quite important for this build using the chest. Now finally, we'll be also using the experimental belt which gives us more minion damage and also more health for minions and also ourselves. Notice how this particular belt, you could seal the experimental effects. Similarly, you can seal the experimental effects on the gloves. And this will allow you to have one additional effect which make those items extremely powerful and also extremely good. So let me show you guys over here about sealing those effects. So here you can see Ruins of Research will allow you to seal the experimental effects, which will free up another effects, and during the crafting of those methods, you can see why some of those builds will have 5 effects, and this is incredibly good. Now you might also notice that the boots also have experimental effects. In order to get something like this, you'll have to get an experimental item that also is in the version of Exalted item. And then crafting those items onto your unique items, you have a chance of getting those effects. And this of course is the ideal endgame build. So you guys are not expected to get those LPs right away, maybe 1 LP, maybe 0 LP. And I'll talk about how to farm for LP unique items on the second part. Now briefly going through the skills and also passive for the build. For our build, we'll be using Summoning Wraith, Dread Shade, Summoning Zombies, Infernal Shade, and also Summon Skeleton Mages. So I could come over here to the builder's guide, but I think the notes will provide a better summary. So we'll be summoning our Wraith, and we'll be getting critical multipliers as we use the spells and also we use the abilities. So one of the biggest highlights is going to be the 90% critical multiplier over here to hit tremendous damage. Now 2 of the buffing spells we'll be using will be Dread Shade together with Infernal Shade. Now let's come over first to the Infernal Shade. Infernal Shade will provide us with additional damage to our minions, and also this can have unlimited duration from this particular passive. Together with the ability of Dread Shade over here, which let me come over here, Dread Shade will provide us with minions always crit, which means we just have to stack minion multipliers to deal the most damage with our Wraith Lord. Now this particular spell will require you to be constantly casting your minions, so which we'll explain on the second part. And I'll be explaining this on the skill rotations. Now for most of the time, you're summoning zombies to be consumed by your Wraith Lord, and this is a similar case for summoning Skeleton Mages. Now the Skeleton Mages is one of my favorite blink and also traversal spells, because it allows for terrain jumping. Now if you haven't seen my previous Level in Flame Necromancer guide, I was talking about how lovely this spell is, because I take all my minions with me and I can jump over terrains. This is not the case for Transplant because you cannot jump over terrains, but it will be more defensive if you guys want to try that spell. Now briefly going through the skill rotations, and I think our notes summarized pretty nicely. So firstly you summon the Wraith Lord, and then you're going to cast your perma buff with Infernal Shade onto the Wraith Lord. You're going to notice a fire aura onto the Wraith Lord. After that, we'll be casting our second buff, Dread Shade, onto the Wraith Lord before we start the fight. Or most of the time, you just cast it right away. So this will give the minion 100% buff chance, but this will slowly kill our summons. So we will have to make sure to constantly buffing the summons once it dies or once the buff expires. You can notice the icon over here on the character for this buff for the minions. Now during this time, we can be summoning zombies and also summoning skeleton mages as they absorb by the Wraith Lord. Together with the ability to control our minions using the A button, we can tell our minions to move around to dodge boss spells and also especially the one-shotting spells in the later stage of the game, or to focus target enemy. So this part is going to be quite important to learn how to macro and also command your minions. Now if your Wraith Lord dies, you can resummon it quickly and then reapply the buffs we talked about over here with the Infernal Shade and also Dread Shade buff over here. And finally guys, as you push for higher level corruption, you should be moving behind your minions. Initially you can be moving in front of your minions, but later stage you want your minions to tank up for you. And this is when minion health comes really handy for higher difficulties. Now the idols and also blessings for this build are quite straightforward. You'll be getting minion damage, you'll be getting some defensive potentials, and also some armor, physical resistance, ward per second. Most of the build will consist getting additional resistance, so you get all resistance over 75. Together with health percentage and also more health percentage and also flat health, you can also consider getting some mark for death with minions, but this will be sacrificing additional health. So for Rax's build, he went for all HP, but for Raz QT's build, he went for some damage. I decided to go for some damage as well, which allows us to deal even more damage. Now coming over to a second part of the video. Yes guys, I'm really excited for this build, and I made a really detailed guide to show you guys how to farm for each of your items. Well, initially guys, if you're in the Merchant Guild, those will be really cheap to buy with 0 LP. But if you're in the Circle of Fortune, you are in a good luck chance, because here notice I have found 3 legendary potential, 2 legendary potential, and also another 3 legendary potential on my Falconer. And also in the other account, I didn't find it, it's on the other character, so I'm currently using the Marksman. So I found some really nice legendary potentials simply because I was in the Circle of Fortune. I really recommend coming over to this video to learn the method to farm a lot of items using Circle of Fortune. But regardless which factions you are in guys, those following guides should help you a lot. Now as you can see in the builder's guide, there are about 5 unique items that can be crafted into legendaries. So let's go through these with the order of priority. The most important piece will be the helmet, and this one can be farmed in the timeline for the Black Sun. It is uncommon drop rate, means that you can be finding this item with Runes of Ascendance with 4.5%. So here we're simulating 1000 copies of the item to see how many times you can find items you want. And for the sword over here, for example, it's about 12%. Now following from the helmet, you can also be finding your amulet, your chest, and also your sword in those various regions of the Monolith. You can see the rarity of the items and also the chance of you getting those items using Runes of Ascendance. So what I recommend is, if you're farming for the helmet, using your Runes of Ascendance is definitely good, because you want the build, right? But after that, you can decide which of the timelines you want to farm. And for the timelines I want to farm a lot, I don't plan to use Runes of Ascendance, because I find those items eventually. But for the timelines I don't plan to farm a lot, I might use the Runes of Ascendance, so this way I can avoid those timelines. Now one thing to notice, for the boots, it is more of a common job coming from the boss for this particular timeline. It is said to be a 50% common job, but most of the time you're not getting legendary potential onto those boots. So if you're farming for legendary potentials, this can still take some time. Just to show you guys over here, the legendary potential for 1 LP is about 19%. The second one, 2 LP, is about 1.35%. So most of the cases guys, if you're farming for the boots, 1 legendary potential, it's pretty good already. Now I think the item priority is pretty straightforward. You need the helmet to get things going. And then it is very easy to get the boots with no legendary potential, because it's a common job from the boss. And then finally, going for your chest and also your sword will be great if you also want to farm those timelines. The chest is definitely a little more rare over here guys. And you can see it only has a 3% chance of getting it with Runes of Ascendance. So farming for the Blood, Force and also Death map is not bad, especially because this also drops the boots as well to get your legendary potentials. Now if you guys want to follow up with anything with the notes, I'll have it available in the links below. And yes, we have tons of notes for last Epoch, and I'll be adding more notes in the future. Now finally, coming over to the loot filters. I'll be making additional loot filter for you guys focused on the Wraith Lord. Currently I do have a loot filter for the Necromancer, but this will be focused on the fire minions. I'll be adjusting this a little bit for the necrotic minions for the Wraith Lord, and posting this one for you guys very shortly. And yes guys, after playing the Marksman, now I want to play the Wraith Lord. Oh gosh, there's so many builds to play. But I'll be making a very detailed Wraith Lord leveling guide, transitional guide, and also farming build guide before you get items and after you get your items, for the best experience of trying this build and getting the most out of it. Now if you guys haven't subscribed, this is a really good time to do so, because I'll be learning with tons of the top meta, last Epoch build from different players in terms of solo and also in terms of co-op, to push for higher corruptions, 800, 2000 here, and also different ways of getting top leaderboard with arena with leveling. And in doing so, we'll be learning multiple builds from the best players in the world. So make sure you subscribe and join me on this adventure to learn with last Epoch. And if you guys do have an amazing build, whether it's a fun build, it's a creative build, or maybe a top meta build, you can share with me on Discord, and I'll look into it, learn the build, and share with everyone on the Last Epoch community.